Hey guys, I want to share another one with y'all tonight. This one's going to kind of just be a second one to the drop we're going to have today. But this one here is might bother some viewers, so there is a discretion on this video. Uh, but here we go. Out in the cold wilds of the Kenai Peninsula of Alaska is a windswept array of buildings in the middle of nowhere called Portlock. You will realize that this is actually nothing but some rotted out carcasses of buildings, long uninhabited, and the twisted, rusted remains of an old empty cannery poking out of a shoreline like the fossil of some ancient deep leviathan. This was once the little paradise away from it all, that one would think is bustling seaport that managed to grow and thrive at one point. Yet this place was also some time forsaken, the inhabitants held under siege by strange forces they could not understand and could not cope with, leading to strange phenomena, mysteries, deaths, vanishings, and mass abandonment, the unsolved mystery discussed to this day. The community of Portlock was first established in 1786 with the arrival of the British captain Nathaniel Portlock, from which the town derived its name. At the time, the only people who lived there were mostly native and Russians. At first, it was a little more than the collection of huts. Serene sanctuary away from civilian, surrounded by natural splendor. It would not be until 1900 that any large-scale settlement would take place here. When a salmon cannery was established along with the shore at the bay, the cannery was a fairly big operation, finding vast resources of fish in the unspoiled clear waters and bringing in droves of people looking for work. Growing to meet the needs of the expanding population of cannery workers willing to live in this remote wild place, by the 1920s, Portlock was booming. Yet while the town thrived for some years, the background seems that there were dark and mysterious forces lurking. Even before Portlock had even existed, there have been long, sinister stories told by the natives of the area. They had long told of a creature stalking the wilderness for the region, which they referred to, and I'm probably going to butcher this, the Nanatic, roughly translating to half man, half beast. The natives were apparently terrified of these creatures and would avoid any area in which they were known to lurk. At first, Portlock seemed safe, but whether the Nanatic had anything to do with it or not, strange things began happening in and around Portlock not long after the settlement. The first bizarre incident allegedly happened in as early as 1905, just a few years after the cannery had opened. At this time, many of the workers at the cannery suddenly stopped coming to work and refused to come back. But this wasn't due to the poor pay or working conditions, but rather because the men were deeply spooked. They claimed that there was something in the woods commonly reported by the men as being large, dark shapes that would stare at them from the tree line, at the shore, and sometimes display menacing behavior. The workers were eventually convinced to come back following season, but this was not the end of the town's problems. In the 1920s and 30s, there were several mysterious deaths in the area that seems to have been caused by something very large and powerful. The first was a local hunter by the name of Albert Petka, who was out hunting with his dogs in the 1920s, when he came across a massive hairy creature that came from the trees, to strike him in the chest, sending him flying. Petka's dogs allegedly managed to chase this beast off. When the rescuers arrived, he explained that it had happened before, but before he died, he told them the creature that attacked him. Natives at the time saw this as a bad sign, believing it to be evidence of the Nanatic had come to haunt the area. Rumors like this persisted for years, only further bolstered by the stories of miners, loggers, hunters, and cannery workers finding huge tracks in the woods or seeing fleeting dark shapes. Sometimes there were some reports of frightened natives that were also ghostly entities that followed, which took the form of a woman wearing a long black dress and who would appear at the top of the cliffs near the stream and moan before she would vanish. She would scream and moan. In the 1930s, there was another alleged violent attack in the area. On this occasion, a logger named Andrew Kamek went off to his site as usual, but later found dead, his head bashed in by a piece of logging equipment. It was very odd because the body was found distance away from the actual site. The piece of the machinery used to kill him was way too far heavy for any man to have even been able to pick up, much less drag it any significant distance. After this thing began to get rather sinister, it was reported that the people began to go missing fairly regularly, going off hunting or their jobs never returned. Stories like this sent natives into panic, and many of them fled Portlock altogether. Many men attempted to pick up the one item that was used to kill this logger. None of them could do it or drag it. When the 1930s incident started to happen, most of the Russian actually moved out of town for a year. The people running the cannery basically begged their workers to come back, and they set up armed guards for a short period of time. They were trying to get their workers back to town using any means possible. Most were eventually coaxed into coming back, but this was not nearly the end of the weirdness. People continued to disappear without a trace, and sometimes the missing were found in quite the gruesome state. In 1940, it was reported that a search party had been sent out to find a missing hunter, which would claim that they had come across his body in a creek, mutilated and torn apart in a way not consistent with any kind of bear attack. The bodies would reportedly be found apparently washed down from the mountains into a nearby lagoon, but the others still discovered washed up in the shores of Port Chatham. Arms, legs, heads, body parts, all ripped apart, floating down in pieces. All of them ripped apart and maimed as if something immensely powerful had grabbed them and just shredded them. There were so many people turning into the lagoon dead that it began to truly look like locals. The locals started pointing at these gloomy woods that they were afraid. Intestines and other parts would often be seen hanging from the trees around the lagoon. Wow. These disappearances and deaths coincided with the wave of sightings of a large hairy creature and less identifiable shadow entities. On one occasion, a local man named Tom Larson claimed to have seen one on the beach methodically tearing apart a fish will, but said when he had tried to shoot at it, his rifle, he felt oddly compelled not to fire at it. The settlers called these things mountain apes, hairy men, or even dust devils. The natives called them the Nanatic. But whatever one called them, all the strangers and deaths reported from 1940 to 51, the town was completely abandoned because people were tired of seeing their loved ones shredded and pieces of them hanging from the trees circling the town. The people did leave the town, we know, when the town and post office shut down. Everything was shut down. Dozens upon dozens of people were slaughtered by these creatures. Even this abandonment was not the end of the strange phenomenon in this area, as there has been Bigfoot sightings in the years since. Some examples are a man who claimed to have been chased by Bigfoot in early 1968. He was circled by a menacing large creature for 3 nights straight. In 1990, there was apparently a Native man who suffered a heart attack. When paramedics come to save him, he ranted, "Did it bother you? Did you see it? There can be no doubt that this place has creatures," as he explained to them. He had saw the large demon before he passed from his heart attack. There you go, guys. There was something terrible going on in that town. I wanted to share that with you and get your thoughts and opinions on that. People shredded, hanging from the trees, tore apart, body parts floating down the creek. I thought y'all would really enjoy that one. Hope you enjoy it, guys. Keep your head on a swivel. Don't forget, coming up, not this Saturday, but next Saturday, it's going to be Kirk and Christy and Janice are going to be doing the live for me. I'm having my procedure's been postponed till the 24th, which will make me miss, I think it's the 26th, which will be Saturday. They're going to hold the fort down for me that night, guys. Go support them. I would appreciate that. Keep your heads on a swivel, and until next time, don't be something's dinner.